today? How many's got the victory in Jesus? And you're happy about it? Well, first of all, wasn't last week Ryan and Michaela Nichols just absolutely phenomenal? Wow. What an incredible testimony. And I don't know if you saw, I believe our Facebook video of that had over 5,000 hits. Come on, to God be the glory. Heard from people being inspired and having their faith elevated by what they saw there. And I'm excited about today. We're gonna finish off this series, This Is My Story, and I'm so glad to have my good friend Tim Rutledge here today. Tim, we first met, you were the youth pastor in Pentecostals of Alexandria, then you pastored for a while, and he's in Mississippi with his family now, and you're gonna be inspired. I'm gonna warn you ahead of time, there's gonna be some ups and downs today, but it ends up. And why don't we just give a great big Christ Tab welcome to Tim Rutledge. Can we stand right now? Let him know we're glad he's here today. You may be seated, and we're just going to have a little bit of a discussion, and then Tim's going to kind of finish it off with a word. But Tim, first of all, welcome back. You were here 10, 12 years ago, something like that, when you were doing youth ministry, and lots happened between here and there.
Whole lot.
And why don't you just start off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your childhood, a little bit where you came from, how you got here.
All right, I was born in Houston, Texas. Left when I was 3 years old, moved to Louisiana. There's a difference in North and South in the United States and in Louisiana. Let me tell you a little difference. I lived in northern Louisiana. The difference in northern and southern Louisiana is this: we don't eat roadkill in northern Louisiana. And on our reality TV shows, we don't have subtitles when we're speaking English. We have a little bit of sense, and we just don't eat crazy stuff. But I lived in Louisiana from the time I was 3 years old until most of my life. Pretty much raised in the church, played music, was a drummer since I was 4 years old. Traveled at some point, made a living at it. Got into student ministry. I was 19 years old. Started student ministry. People ask me, how did you get into student ministry? Did an angelic choir bid you up into the bosom of Abraham and God call you? No. And I teach this in leadership. I was the oldest in our youth group, and I had a car.
There you go.
And I responded to need, and God called me. And I did that for 25 years.
Wow. Come on, let's praise God for that. And you had kind of some celebrity friendships as a child,
I
right?
did. We moved to a little town called Rayville. And before Rayville, we moved to a little town called Start, not Starks, Start, S-T-A-R-T, a town of community of 500 people. It was a suburb of Rayville, which was 5,000. When you're a suburb of a town that's 5,000, you're small.
Yeah, we have a suburb. Herrick has a suburb. It's called Rabbit Town.
Yeah, Rabbit Town?
That's our suburb.
But it was amazing.
Come on, Rabbit Town.
Yeah, there you
Rabbit
go.
Town. Yeah.
It was amazing. I was a baseball player, and I was in All-Stars, and we were moving from another little town to Start because my dad was a manager, was in management, and was go to these grocery stores and help them get on their feet, and he worked for this company. And I remember, like it was yesterday, we were playing in district, was in district playoff finals, and he brought this boy with him to stay with us. When we'd already moved, but I was playing for this certain city, and then we're moving going to our new home after the game, and we won district, and then we were moving going to our house. And thought it's strange. My dad had never done that. And I was like, okay. And so I meet this kid, and I'm 10 and he's 9. And he would do that periodically for the next couple years, about every couple weeks. And this kid's name was Timmy Smith. And we became friends. And then later he moves across the street in Start. His mom, single mom, bought a house, divorced his stepdad. He was an abusive man and was a truck driver. And he just later on became the music legend Tim McGraw. So that's how we're friends to this day.
You guys still text?
Yeah, we still text a couple weeks ago. Had the honor to baptize several of his family. We'll probably get into that later. And we were very close. And I didn't know this, but my dad, his mom shopped in the store my dad managed. And my dad, when his stepdad would come off the road, he was an alcoholic, a good man, he was an alcoholic. And he had 2 younger sisters, and he was the only one that wasn't Mr. Smith's. And his stepdad would come off the road, and he would take it out on Tim. And my dad knew that, so when his dad would come in, his stepdad, my dad would get him out of the house and bring him to our house. My dad never told us that. I found this out 5 or 6 years ago. Tim told me that. I'm like, my dad never said a word. I didn't know why you came to my house. That was the weirdest thing I'd ever, my dad never did that. I just took it, my dad's just weird or something. I said, he said that's what he was doing. He didn't want me to be abused.
Which just shows you never know who you're affecting.
No, never knew.
What the future will. Well, that's awesome. Well, so why don't you do youth ministry. You're at Pentecostal of Alexandria. And by the way, excellent youth leader, renowned in our circles.
I was honored.
And then you, maybe we should backtrack. You meet your wife somewhere along the way. Why don't you tell us?
I was at Living Way in West Monroe. My wife went across town to another church, and they had just moved from Jackson, Mississippi, and I had bought a new sports car. It was my first car I bought, and I leased it, and I saw this nice looking blonde after church at a pizza place looking in that car, and I rushed outside as if I was leaving. And we got to talking, and we talked about 45 minutes, and about 1.5 years later, we got married. And that's how that worked. And then God led us to Woodlawn in Columbia, Mississippi. James Carney was the pastor. And the pastor there now is Pastor Jaron Carney, who was 12 years old when I went there. And then we were there 6 years. I was the first full-time youth pastor they ever hired. And then God led us to Alexandria, Louisiana. Pastor Anthony Mangan, his son Gentry, who is now the pastor, he was 12 years old when I went there. So if a guy wants to
come back here when George is 12.
Have me come youth pastor when he's 12, and he'll be the next pastor. That's pretty much guaranteed.
Yeah, you got to come here when George is 12.
And I was there 11 years, and then God called us to plant a church.
So you settle on Nashville.
Yes.
And I remember we visited several times, and why don't you just take us through kind of that season of life? You were trying to have children, and you settle on adoption.
Yeah.
And so just talk about that process.
We started in Alexandria. We had been married probably 14 years. And we had decided we wanted to start having children. And we knew my wife had some issues, female issues, and we tried and tried just about everything we could try. And once we pretty much figured out that we weren't able to have those, we started the adoption process. And we tried for 13 years.
Wow.
We started international with, Vietnam. We went to international parenting classes. We would drive from Alexandria to Baton Rouge. We did that for like 6 months every Tuesday to take international parenting classes. Spent thousands of dollars only for it to fall through, not happen, all the red tape. Moved to Nashville, would get close, changed to China, had case studies, kept all that up for years, for 13 years. And the last time we were supposed to get a child the next day, they changed their mind.
Oh, man.
And we were in Nashville, and we started a church, and God was blessing us, and it was in 2011. And I'll never forget, my wife she was just done. And she said, I'm done. She said, I can't go through the emotional rejection. I can't do this anymore. And we just said, we come to the conclusion. We said, God, if it's not your will for us to have children, we accept that. Although we'd worked with everybody else's kids for 24 years. If it's not your will, we accept that as your plan, and we're good with that. And that's what we did. And you want me to continue?
Yeah.
And during that process, a family came that was coming to our church. His sister from Houston and her husband visited. Little did we know, she was an administrator, the head administrator for the president who was over the largest Christian foster parenting agency in the nation, in Houston. And during the service, as I was speaking, God spoke to her and said, you're going to get them a child. She told us afterwards. Her name is Ronnie Gidrose, I'm sure it's his daughter. She came to our house afterwards, and she told us, and we had heard stuff before, and so we had a lot of people, so we kind of, okay. And 6 months later, she calls us on February the 13th, and says, well, I have a girl who's 17 years old. She's not mentally capable of taking care of her child, and through private adoption, it's only going to cost you X amount of dollars. She wants you to give her rights to you and your wife. And the baby was 10 days old.
I think we have a picture.
Yeah, probably do. And we named him, and let me backtrack. 8 months prior, my wife had tragically lost her brother, Kevin. And when he passed away at 36 years old, he had 7-year-old triplets. They were 7 years old. She lost her brother tragically 2 weeks after we were born, her other brother. He was 22 years old of leukemia that had came back rapidly when he was 19. And she's been through a lot. And so we named him after her brother that she had lost 8 months prior to us getting him. And we named him Kevin Trey. My middle name's Ray. Hers is Faye with an E. So we named Kevin Trey, Traye, Rutledge. And he was 10 days old when we got him. And we had to stay in Houston 2 weeks, and we brought him home. And I'll never forget when we drove up in the driveway of our home in Spring Hill, she said, life is perfect. That was her words. Sitting on the porch was diapers in massive boxes, all kinds of stuff that Mr. McGraw had sent us, and his sister that we had baptized that was helping with the children's ministry of our church, and her son. They were waiting on us at 1:30 in the morning because they wanted to hold that baby. And so life began for us in 2012.
Perfect.
In our early 40s.
Come on now.
As parents. And life was perfect.
So life is perfect.
Amazing.
Just beautiful baby. Yeah. Wow, can we just give God praise for that beautiful baby? And I want to just stop, and we want to honor all of our adoptive parents and foster parents. Come on, let's give them a hand. The Bennetts, and I could name so many. Thank you. Thank you. May the 4th, 2012. Why don't you just walk us through that day?
I was at work, and I worked a job. I was bivocational. We were launching a church, and we grew rapidly. We changed locations. I knew 4 people when we went. We was right at 100 people within a year and a half. God was blessing it. It's just like we didn't know what we were doing, and everything we touched worked. I'd read so many books. I was a reader, and one book said do this, another book said do this. I said, I can't do this. And God just spoke to me and said, read the Bible and I'll direct you. Just do what I tell you to do. I said, okay, that's a novel idea anyway. And so I just did it. I love people, and here we go. And God just blessed it. And we moved 3 times, and it's like every time we needed a spot, God would open it up. And it was just like we were right by Cool Springs Mall in Nashville and Franklin, and they called us, and I was paying $1,000 a month on Franklin, right off of Mallory Station Road. Folks, if you know that area, you can't get a porta-john for $1,000 a month. And this was in the back. It was an auditorium that sat 200, had drums, all the instruments, screen. We didn't have to set up anything. God blessed us. And so I'm at work, really tough job. I'm a golfer, and I worked at a golf shop. Terrible job. And I was doing some training, and I got a call from my neighbor. And they called me to the front and said, you got a call? It was my neighbor. He said, Tim, this is such and such. I live next door. I said, yes, sir. He said, I knew something was wrong. And they said, they've rushed your little boy to the hospital. And something's wrong. And I dropped the phone, tried to call my wife. I couldn't get a hold of her. And he told me where it was, and I rushed there. And I got there about the time the ambulance got there. And I'll never forget when they pulled my boy out of the ambulance. And he wasn't breathing. And they were trying to resuscitate him. My wife had put him down for a nap, as she did every day. And she was finishing up his room. And he was 2 months and 21 days old. And she went to check on him the 3rd time to wake him up. And he wasn't breathing. And she tried to resuscitate him and gave him CPR, and he wasn't breathing. And I'll never forget the doctors were there, and I had no pride. And I laid my hands on him, and I prayed over him, and I spoke in tongues over him. And I begged God. And I fell on my knees, and I begged. And we lost our miracle. Wife walked in. And to be there for travel. I call literally one person. But churches all over the nation, had found out. I don't know how. I was numb. I didn't know what to do. It did mine. And life as we knew it. And we went from everything is perfect to nothing is right. And that was May the 4th, 2012. And we went from the top of the mountain in 1 minute. They ruled it as to the head to welcome and send out his picture and introduce him to everybody we knew. And I had him all